Sweet Tooth Volume 5, Unnatural Habitat, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Jeff Lemire, as well as Matt Kindt. Alright, Volume 5. Before I dive into the story, I want to talk about the artwork of Sweet Tooth. I know a lot of you hate Jeff Lemire's art. I read the comments, and a lot of you call it garbage and whatnot, and you do not like it. And I knew his artwork can be a little bit polarizing. In my Volume 1 video of this series, I even mentioned that his artwork's not for everyone. It's very scratchy. It's like super indie artwork. It's not the best. But I feel, it kind of helps set the tone of the book, and it kind of works for the story. But I totally get if you're not into the artwork. It's not the most appealing artwork, that's for sure. But in this volume, there's a 3-issue arc called The Taxidermist, and we have a new artist. And that artist is Matt Kindt. And let me say this, if you had trouble with Jeff Lemire's artwork, you are not going to like this Matt Kindt's artwork, because it is kind of atrocious. It is not good. I don't like it. I didn't like it. You're going to be begging for Jeff Lemire's art to come back after you see the 3 issues of The Taxidermist. The story is still brilliant. The story is still really good. But, man, the artwork in this one. Yeah. So let's dive into Volume 5, Unnatural Habitat. We can go through The Taxidermist, which is a very important volume where we learn a lot of the history in Alaska and set some stuff up there. And then we're going to return back to the current day and learn more about Project Evergreen and Walter and Jeppard and see how that whole situation there plays out. So let's dive into Volume 5. Issue 26, The Taxidermist, Part 1 of 3, The Hinterlands. The Taxidermist is a 3-issue arc, and it explains some of the secret history that will shed light on the hybrid animals and what is in Alaska. It seems like a divergence at first, but it's important to understand the greater mysteries going on to go through these issues. So the year is 1911. That is way in the past. In 1911, there was a man named Louis Simpson. He was a promising young physician. He was supposed to marry a woman named Anne Thacker. Anne is the daughter of one of England's most respected and rich families. However, Louis wanted to postpone the wedding for a year to join a Christian mission heading to northern Alaska to bring Christ to the seal-eating savages that lived there. Louis, he either really believed in Jesus or he was just looking for an excuse to avoid getting married. Louis, he went on this mission. He would write Anne regularly, but eventually 6 months ago, he stopped. And Anne was devastated. Her fiancé was missing, and there was no word from any of the other missionaries there since. Everyone feared the worst. Anne begged her rich dad to send a search party to Alaska to find her fiancé Louis. Eventually, Dr. James Thacker, Anne's brother, took on the mission. James used his family's considerable wealth and influence and commissioned a ship to Alaska to search for Louis. Now, James was aboard the ship for about a month with nothing but his interest in taxidermy to keep him occupied. Taxidermy is the art of preparing, stuffing, and mounting the skins of animals with lifelike effect. The ship that he is on is called the Aberdeen, and it was captained by a man named Captain Jasper. Eventually, the Aberdeen arrived at its destination in Alaska. The Aberdeen found the ship that Louis arrived in, and it looked abandoned, and it looked like no one had been there for months. So, the plan was for James Thacker, Captain Jasper, and one of Jasper's men named Mr. Kemp. The 3 of them would look for Louis and his men, forming a search party, and the rest of the crew of the Aberdeen would stay behind. James expected to be gone for about 3 weeks, and if the crew of the Aberdeen heard nothing by the time 3 weeks was up, they should send a search party in after them. So James, the captain, and Mr. Kemp headed off with a pack of sled dogs to begin their search. They traveled for about 6 days and they made camp for the night. And during the night, while they were asleep, their sled dogs were murdered. When they woke up from the noise, they saw the dead dogs and they debated who did it and what they should do. They suspected maybe the savages were responsible. But how do they go on without these dogs? Captain Jasper says, well, the missionary camp that they built is nearby. He suggests that they keep going and hopefully they will find the answers they seek there. So eventually they arrived at the missionary camp. We see a small, crude church was built by Louis and the other missionaries. James, Captain Jasper, and Mr. Kemp walk through the church doors, and they see dead bodies everywhere, rotting on the floor, the dead remains of the missionaries. Mr. Kemp, he goes outside and vomits, and James runs away. Eventually, Captain Jasper tells James, "You're a doctor," and he orders him to get into that church and try to figure out what the men died of. So James, he goes back into the church, he investigates the bodies, and he found no wounds. These men died of some sort of disease. James, he wanted to investigate the bodies more closely, but they didn't want to take any risks of catching whatever disease these men had, so they left the missionary church. In the distance, a man was approaching them. This man arrived, and he was an Inuit, and Captain Jasper attacked the Inuit man and asked him if he killed these men in the church, and Jasper starts hitting the man. Mr. Kemp joins in and attacking the Inuit man, but all of a sudden, Mr. Kemp gets a harpoon launched through his shoulder. Who threw this harpoon? It is revealed to be Louis Simpson himself. Dressed in Inuit clothes, he appears to have gone native. Issue 27, The Taxidermist, Part 2, Taboos. So Captain Jasper is attacking Louis now, feeding him punches. James tells the captain to back off. The man you're hitting is the man we're here to save. This is Louis. The captain is angry. Louis just speared his friend, Mr. Kemp. Louis explains he did what he had to do to save his Inuit brother that Kemp was attacking. The captain, talking to Louis and referring to the Inuit man, says, "That filthy primitive killed our dogs." And Louis explains, "No, I killed your damn dogs and you were too stupid to turn back." Louis, looking at Kemp, says his people can help him. They have medicine, but we have to move fast. Captain Jasper replies, "Your people? What the hell are you playing at here, man?" And James says, "Really, Louis? This is all a bit much, isn't it? What the hell happened to you? We came to bring you back home, and here you are going native? All your men long dead?" And Louis explains, "I have no intention of going anywhere with you, James, but I can help him. It's your choice." Louis offered to tell them what happened to the missionaries as well, but he says it's a long story and it will be dark soon and their man doesn't have very long left. So James and the captain, they don't really trust Louis, but their sled dogs are dead, and they know Mr. Kemp will definitely not make it without Louis' help. Plus, they want to know what's going on, so they really have no choice and they decide to follow Louis and the other Inuit man back to where the Inuits live. As they're walking, Louis is explaining that his people saw James's boat arrive ashore 2 weeks ago, so he set out immediately to sabotage them. He killed their dogs, hoping it would force them to turn back and leave. James asks why, and Louis explains he was trying to save James and the others from the sickness that took the missionaries and now threatens his people. Louis says, "You see, I made the gods angry, James." Louis then explains what happened to him. He arrived here 2 years ago with a Jesuit mission, hoping to bring the word of Christ to this barren land. Louis and his fellow missionaries arrived and met the Inuit people, and they built a church. And the Inuits weren't savages at all, but a gentle, graceful people. They welcomed him and were kind, and taught him how to hunt and live off the land. Louis says they were so beautiful and enlightened. Eventually, Louis found himself spending more and more time with the Inuits and less with his own people. The missionaries frowned upon Louis' relationship, but Louis didn't care. And eventually, Louis fell in love with an Inuit woman. James interrupts the story and asks, "What about my sister, Anne?" And Louis says that James' sister, Anne, was a fine girl, but the relationship was always one of convenience. He never loved her. And here he found an Inuit woman and fell in love with her, and they ended up getting married. And he lived among the Inuit permanently now. Now one day Louis was on a hunt with his Inuit brothers. They were hunting for animal skins, and Louis, he wandered away from the hunting party, and he came across a weird tunnel that seemed to lead below the ice. Louis, ever curious, went into the tunnel, never one to shy away from mystery. And down in that tunnel, Louis found a huge underground ice cave with strange carved tablets that resembled doorways. They seemed to have animals engraved onto them. Louis approached one of the tablets with a deer or a caribou carved into it. It was extremely heavy. Louis, he opened it, and inside he saw the skeleton remains of this deer creature there. Eventually, his tribesmen found Louis in this ice cave, and they dragged him out of there, and they sealed up the chamber. And in all of his time with the Inuits, they never showed him anger, except that day. That night back in camp, the shaman spoke to him. And the shaman never really said much to Louis before this, so it's kind of a big deal that he was talking to Louis. The shaman explained what Louis had found there, and what he'd unwittingly let loose upon the land. That place was sacred to them, and never to be entered by anyone other than the shaman. The cave was where the gods went to rest after their earthly bodies had died. Their spirits remained free, but their bodies would rest there until they returned one day. The tomb he opened was the home of Taxidermist, the god of the earth who owned all the deer. He is the god of hunting. He is also the protector of any creatures that entered any parts of the northern sky. Louis disturbed his rest. Louis had angered him and all the gods of this land, and now there would be a price to pay. Louis, he thought this was all nonsense, but months later, he knew the angry gods that the shaman spoke of were indeed very real. Louis' wife became pregnant, and when she gave birth, that is when the missionaries began getting sick, and that is when the Inuit people also began getting sick. The shaman told Louis that this was his doing. This was the price of his betrayal, mankind's price for disturbing the gods. After Louis' story finishes, James, the captain, Mr. Kemp, Louis, and the other Inuit all arrive to where the Inuits' igloos are. And James tells Louis that his story is insane, and that he's a man of science. How can he believe in all this mystical crap? And Louis tells James, "I understand your reservations. I do. I had them myself. But any doubts were put aside the moment my son was born. You see, James, he is no mere boy. He is a god in the flesh, and he comes to reclaim this land." And we see Louis' son is a deer-human hybrid baby, very similar to Gus. Issue 28, The Taxidermist Part 3, Apocalypse. They are all looking at the deer baby. Louis explains that his son is god of earth. He is Taxidermist, to whom all creatures belong. The Inuits then inform James and Captain Jasper that this Mr. Kemp is dead and they couldn't save him. James and Captain Jasper are a little taken aback by this. Louis tells James that his son, Taxidermist, has returned to purify the world, and that man's time is almost over. We are not worthy of this place. Soon the world will be returned to the animals, the innocents. Louis tells James that the sickness that resides in his son that killed the people here is probably now in James as well. And he believes it is James's destiny to now travel back to England and bring the disease with him to purify England too. James thinks Louis is crazy and that his son is an aberration of nature, and if his son is carrying a disease, they should kill the child and the disease will go with it. Louis threatens James, telling him that this is no creature, it is my son, and you will not touch him. Things get heated. Captain Jasper points his rifle. Eventually, James and the captain are forced to leave. They are outnumbered by the Inuits, and they are no longer being welcomed. So James and the captain, they leave. They try to make their way back to the boat to the Aberdeen, but they have no sled dogs, and their journey is pretty far. They walked in the snow for days, and they eventually passed out, and they almost froze to death in the snow. But luckily, they were found by a search party sent from the Aberdeen. Now, the Aberdeen's crew was supposed to send out a search party if James and the captain were gone for 3 weeks, and they were. So luckily, that search party found them. The captain's men brought James and Captain Jasper back to that missionary church to regroup. Once there, they got a fire going, and James and the captain started feeling better. They were no longer freezing to death anymore. Eventually, the people decided to burn down the church to be safe and make sure the disease would not spread. The captain asked James, "We're going back there, aren't we?" James, he wants to go back and kill the child, as the child is the source of this terrible disease. And they also want to get Louis as well. James says, "I am going back. It's your choice if you and your men want to join me or not." And the captain realizes that James's rich daddy wouldn't be paying him anytime soon if they came back without James. So the captain agrees to return with James and some of his crew to the Inuit people's camp. The next morning, James, the captain, and some of the crew begin their journey to where the Inuits lived. We see at the Inuits' home, Louis is sleeping with his wife and son in an igloo. Louis overhears James and the various men arriving, so he gets dressed and goes outside the igloo to greet them. And outside, James and the captain's crew are armed with guns, confronting Louis and the Inuit people. James demands that the creature be handed over to him. He says, "This is your last chance, Louis. You'll hand over the creature and you'll come back home with me. If you don't, I can't guarantee your safety." And Louis replies, "I don't think so. You're gonna leave. Now. You were like a brother to me once, but he's my son. I'll never let you have him." And James to this says, "Very well. I'm sorry it had to be like this." James, the captain, and the ship's crew begin opening fire on the Inuits and Louis. They slaughter almost all of them. The Inuits with their knives are no match for attackers with guns. It's a bloodbath. James eventually hits Louis in the face with the butt of his rifle, saying, "You should have came peacefully." Captain Jasper knocks Louis' wife onto the ground and shoots her in the head, killing her. The captain is gonna stomp the baby as well, but James says don't. He'll take this wretched thing back to where it came from. It took some convincing, but eventually James convinced Louis to lead them to the underground ice cave/tomb that he claimed to have discovered. So Louis, he begrudgingly led them there, and James took the baby and tossed it inside the tomb, and then had the crew seal the baby inside. As soon as the baby hit the floor, it stopped crying. It perhaps died right then, or it would surely die soon with no one to take care of it. Now, James, his plan was to take Louis back to England, and he told him that he was to never speak another word of this to anyone. Now, even with the baby dead, it was no use. The sickness was already in everyone there. They eventually made their way to shore to the Aberdeen boat, but they all died before they could leave to sail back to England. Louis went first. He had no more fight left in him. And then Captain Jasper and his crew died next. And Dr. James Thacker was the last. James, writing in his journal all of his thoughts and a summary of what he learned here, in his last entry he wrote, "I'll never see England again, never see my poor sister or my poor father, but at least I won't bring this cursed plague back with me. At least they'll be safe. But something has just occurred to me as I write these final words, something terrifying. What if they send someone else after me to this cursed place? What if this was all only the beginning? What if all this happens again?" And that is the end of the Taxidermist storyline. We now know a little bit of the mystery of these hybrid animals and their connection to Alaska and Inuit folklore and their history of causing sickness. We'll have to see how this all connects back to the current day now. Issue 29, Unnatural Habitats, Part 1 of 4. Jeppard has been away from the others in the Project Evergreen Dam and has been living by himself, living off the land. We see him hunting a rabbit for dinner, and eventually Dr. Singh arrives with Gus to meet with Jeppard. Jeppard, startled, almost shoots them. It took about a month for Gus to heal from his wounds he had last volume, and then it took a while for Dr. Singh to manage to sneak out of the dam with Gus, but he managed to do so and make his way back to Jeppard. Jeppard asks Gus if Gus is sure he wants to do this, to leave the others and continue on to Alaska, and Gus affirms, "I want to keep going, want to find where I came from." Now we see, back at the dam, Lucy is getting sicker. All of her hair has fallen out. The sores on her body are showing up in more places. Johnny and Bobby are talking. Johnny found some sort of logbook from the Project Evergreen people. Johnny has been reading through the logs, and he just found a mention of this Haggerty guy, the guy that Walter was telling them about. Now Johnny, he's pretty good with computers, and this computer has been saving recordings of the security cameras in the forest. So Johnny, he's gonna look up the video file corresponding to the log of when this Haggerty supposedly first showed up, hoping he can use it to get some answers. So Johnny, he manages to find the relevant video file, and when he watches it, he says, "Oh shit." Back to Jeppard, Dr. Singh, and Gus. They sneak over to an old garage. Jeppard figured out that this is where this Haggerty's men are situated, most likely. Jeppard, he's gonna sneak into the garage, see if he can steal them a snowmobile, or even better yet, maybe a truck. That way they can use it for transport up to Alaska. Jeppard tells Dr. Singh and Gus to stay here as lookout, and if he takes too long or runs into trouble, to hightail it out of here and back to the dam. So Jeppard, he heads off to the garage. As Jeppard is walking, he comes across a bird hybrid child. Jeppard is a little surprised and a little creeped out by it. The bird hybrid caws at him. Caw! Jeppard tells the little bird hybrid to not be scared, and then the bird just caws again, loudly, and then it flies away. Hearing the noise of the bird, one of the people inside the garage exits and asks, "Who's there?" Jeppard, he fires a bow and arrow at the man that opened the door, thinking him to be a dangerous attacker. The man takes an arrow to his shoulder, and he pleads with Jeppard to not kill him. Jeppard points at the Project Evergreen symbol on the man's coveralls he's wearing, and he asks the man, "You slaughtered them, didn't you?" The man in the Project Evergreen coveralls answers, "What are you talking about?" Jeppard replies, "Don't play innocent. Walter told us all about you." The man responds, "Walter? But Walter's dead." And Jeppard says, "Dead? What are you talking about?" The man replies, "Wait, you didn't think that man in the dam? That's not Walter Fish. That man is Haggerty." Inside the dam, Johnny and Bobby are watching that video footage, and they have come to the same conclusion. This man who says he was Walter is not who he says he is. The man who is claiming to be Walter is actually this Haggerty boogeyman himself, and he has been lying this whole time. Wendy, Becky, and Lucy in the dam are discussing where Dr. Singh and Gus went and how they appear to have left the dam. Walter, or perhaps we shall now refer to him as his correct name, Haggerty, tells the ladies, "They're all gone, it's just us now." Issue 30, Unnatural Habitats, Part 2 of 4. Jeppard, questioning the man in the coveralls, wants answers. Now Gus and Jeppard, they have now entered the garage themselves, and we see various other people in the garage reveal themselves to Jeppard, and they ask Jeppard, "Please, don't hurt us." Jeppard, he backs off from the man in the coveralls, and he asks the people here to start talking. The people here explain that they are survivors of a group called Project Evergreen. They are a government-funded organization that repurposes abandoned industrial spaces and turns them into a self-sustaining green community. The real Walter Fish was their leader, and he was a great man. When the plague hit, the Project Evergreen people stayed in the dam and remained hidden as they felt it was for the best. For years they lived there. One day, a lone survivor named Haggerty stumbled upon the dam. Haggerty seemed harmless, and he asked to stay with them, and against their better judgment, the Project Evergreen people agreed. Now Haggerty, he was polite, and he helped out around the place, but he was a good liar. One day, a group of Project Evergreen people went outside to scavenge, and Haggerty killed nearly everyone inside, and he left Walter as a corpse outside the dam door for the remaining Project Evergreen people to find when they returned from their scavenger mission. Haggerty kept Walter's wife and daughter as some sort of sick trophy for himself inside the dam. The Project Evergreen survivors spent nearly 2 years trying to get back into the dam, but it was impossible, and Haggerty had been setting traps in the woods for them. Jeppard, hearing this story, is furious. He knew that guy was no good, and he's gonna go back to save the others. Dr. Singh, arguing with Jeppard, says that isn't wise, we should just head north. Jeppard isn't gonna leave the rest of them behind, though, alone with that monster. Jeppard asks the Project Evergreen people for the keys to one of their trucks so he can go save his people. Haggerty, now alone with the ladies inside the dam, now feels he can reveal his true self to them. Haggerty tells the ladies that he liked them from the start. Well, he liked 16-year-old Becky most. Lucy is a little old for his tastes, and Wendy's a pig. Lucy asks, what the hell is he talking about? And Haggerty says that this is the real him. With Jeppard and Singh gone, I can let it all hang out now. And like Kevin Spacey in The Usual Suspects, Haggerty can reveal that he was faking being a cripple this whole time, and he doesn't walk with a limp or need these crutches. Lucy pulls her gun out and points it at Haggerty. And Haggerty tells Lucy, don't be like that. I mean, you were never my type, and you have gotten a bit ugly lately. Haggerty runs over to Lucy, elbows her in the face, and says, ugly and weak, and he kicks her in the stomach. Becky says that she's gonna kill him, and she slaps and scratches at Haggerty's face. Haggerty then grabs Becky by the throat and begins choking her. He tells her, now, Becky, I wouldn't want to have to cut that sweet little face of yours. At least not yet, anyway. Now, Jeppard, in the truck, is driving as fast as he can back to the dam. Now Jeppard, he told Sing and Gus to stay behind at the garage for now. It's too dangerous for them. Now while Dr. Sing and Gus are alone, Sing is trying to convince Gus that they should abandon Jeppard and go on without him, and that Jeppard cares for Lucy more than him. Gus gets angry with Sing though and says that he is not going to abandon Jeppard. Gus would abandon Dr. Sing first before he abandons Jeppard. Gus, he goes outside to get some air. He talks to the bird hybrid kid that has returned there, but then when Gus isn't paying attention, he gets grabbed by Dr. Sing from behind. Now Jeppard, driving that truck angrily, guilty, determined, careless. He drives the truck over a patch of ice and it skids on the ice, and the truck crashes through some fencing on the side of the road and flips upside down, and Jeppard gets injured in the crash. Back at the dam, Haggerty has knocked Lucy out. He is trying to lay down the law about how it's going to be now with Wendy and Becky. But Johnny and Bobby enter the room. Johnny knows everything now. He tells them, "Guys, we gotta get out of here. It's Walter. Oh shit." Johnny realizes that Walter, or Haggerty, has revealed his true evil self to everyone. Haggerty points his gun at Johnny. He is going to kill him, but then Bobby bites Haggerty's arm. Haggerty, he throws Bobby across the room. Johnny then tries to attack Haggerty, but Haggerty is a better fighter though, and he elbows Johnny in his face, knocking some of Johnny's teeth out. Haggerty then turns his attention back to Becky, his prize, and he tells her to behave herself or he's gonna have to hurt her. Back over to Jeppard. He is knocked out, upside down in the crashed truck off the side of the road, and he is found by a mysterious, bearded man named Jimmy Jacobs, who has an axe, a rifle, and 2 knives with him. The hybrid bird seems to be this Jimmy Jacobs' companion of sorts. Issue 31, Unnatural Habitats, Part 3 of 4. Dr. Sing has now kidnapped Gus and has stolen one of Project Evergreen's trucks and is driving them both north. Dr. Sing apologizes to Gus and tells him that he knew Gus would never come on his own, so he took him. Gus is angry, irate. He says what Sing did was not right. Gus wants Sing to stop the car and go back now. When Sing refuses, Gus, he yells no, he grabs the steering wheel and begins jerking it back and forth. The truck screeches to a stop. Dr. Sing tries to grab Gus, but Gus bites Sing's hand and then runs out of the truck, away. When Dr. Sing tries to follow Gus, Gus slingshots Dr. Sing in his forehead, and Gus continues running back to the dam and everyone else. Jeppard, he wakes up disoriented. He was taken by that man who found Jeppard in the Project Evergreen truck and taken to some sort of cabin. Jeppard sees that bird hybrid kid in a cage here, and it's cawing at Jeppard. Jimmy Jacobs enters the cabin, the man that found Jeppard, and he says hello to Jeppard. Jimmy doesn't trust Jeppard at all, and he is questioning him pretty intently. He thinks Jeppard is suspicious. He's wondering why Jeppard was in such a rush. He's staring at Jeppard, and he tells him, "I swear I know you from somewhere." Back at the dam, Johnny, Bobby, and Wendy are tied up. They are discussing how Walter was not who they thought he was. And we see Walter, or Haggerty, is having a romantic meal of sorts with Becky. Becky thinks that Haggerty is sick, but Haggerty just slaps her in the face, and Becky says that she's gonna kill him. But Haggerty tells her, "Please, who do you think you are, Jeppard?" Haggerty establishes some rules. He wants Becky to be sweet and nice and do as she's told. The others are tied up, and every time she disobeys him, he's gonna kill one of her friends. Now Gus, he's walking back to that dam, and he comes across Jeppard's fallen over truck in the snow. Back to Jeppard. He is being questioned by that Jimmy. Jimmy keeps wondering where he knows Jeppard from. He asks if Jeppard was in the Kansas plague camp or was he in the Nebraska militia? Jeppard is adamant that he has never met this guy ever in his life. Jimmy keeps questioning. He doesn't believe Jeppard. He says, I just don't believe that. I got a good memory for faces, see? Jeppard pleads with the man, look, I got friends in trouble. I need to go save them. Jimmy continues, you worked in that militia camp, torturing women and children, didn't you? So Jeppard is really failing to make his case here to this Jimmy. Jump over to Gus. He runs all the way back to the dam, and he's pounding on the dam door. Inside the dam, Bobby, Wendy, and Johnny hear that pounding. Bobby, he chews through Wendy's rope with his teeth, and it frees Wendy. Wendy then unties them all. They all then sneak over to the main door and open it for Gus. And they see Gus there, and Gus asks them, where is he? Where is Haggerty? Issue 32, Unnatural Habitats, Part 4 of 4. Haggerty is having his meal with Becky, giving her wine. He acknowledges that legally she's not old enough to drink wine. He then hears the ruckus going on outside. He exits the door and sees Bobby staring at him, and Bobby tells him, you am very bad, man. It was a setup though. Gus was waiting nearby and he shoots at Haggerty with his slingshot, and Haggerty gets hit right in his eye. And then Haggerty, he begins shooting his gun blindly at the kids, but he is missing. Now while Haggerty is distracted, Johnny goes in to save Becky. The two of them then go to retrieve Lucy. We see Lucy is really sick, but she is really pissed off too. She wants to kill this Haggerty for what he did to her. Back over to Jeppard. He is being interrogated further by that Jimmy. Jimmy tells Jeppard, I know you want to get out of here, so just give me something. And Jeppard says, fuck you, fat man. I told you, I ain't ever seen you before in my life. The bird hybrid caws. Caw! Jimmy says, fat man. Did you ever play hockey? And Jeppard says, what? And Jimmy continues, hockey. Did you ever play hockey? And Jeppard answers, yeah, I played left wing Minnesota Wildcats, 2001 to 2009. And Jimmy replies, holy shit, you're Tommy Jeppard. I knew you, man. Jimmy then begins untying Jeppard and he tells him, I'm so sorry, Tommy. I swear I thought you were one of those militia dudes. Couldn't risk you going back and telling everyone where I was. Really, man, I'm really sorry. And Jeppard's asking, who the hell are you? And Jimmy answers, shit, don't you remember me? I'm Jimmy Fatman Jacobs, defenseman for the Plymouth Hounds. We played you guys in the semifinals in 03. We fought in Game 6, remember? Jeppard, he can't believe it. He says, Jimmy Jacobs? Jesus Christ, this is unreal. Jeppard tells this Jimmy that he's gotta go and save his friends. So Jimmy replies, well, I don't know about you, Tommy, but I feel sorry for the motherfucker who picks a fight with the two toughest son of a bitches to ever skate in the Eastern League. Back at the dam, Haggerty is searching for the kids and shooting at them. The kids are hiding atop a large tank. Haggerty begins to climb the tank by way of a ladder, but Bobby, who is hiding down on the ground, sneaks up behind Haggerty and grabs his feet, causing Haggerty to lose his footing and fall off the ladder. Haggerty, he fell off that ladder at a bad angle and broke his leg, and his gun is out of reach now. He tries to crawl for it, but he is not fast enough. Lucy, Johnny, and Becky now arrive on the scene. Back over to Jeppard. Jeppard tells Jimmy where his friends are, but now that it's snowing hard, Jeppard worries they won't be able to get back there without finding the truck, which is going to be hard to do in this weather. Jimmy says they might not need to. He knows a shortcut. He asks Jeppard, can you still skate? See, the riverbed water is all frozen over this time of year. It's a straight shot to the dam. All we gotta do is follow it. So, Jimmy and Jeppard, these two ex-hockey players, lace up their skates and skate down the riverbed. Jimmy comments to Jeppard, just like old times, eh? And Jeppard says, "I can't believe we're doing this. This is so stupid." Jimmy replies, "No way, Tommy. This is freaking awesome." Back inside the dam, Lucy wants to kill Haggerty. Gus says that they can't kill him. They all argue about it, but eventually they decide to just banish Haggerty to outside the dam. It's freezing cold outside and snowing, and he shouldn't last long out there. But he'll have a chance, I guess. So outside the dam door, Haggerty is thrown out, and he is pounding on the door, and he wants back in. He says, "This is my dam, this is my dam." Realizing he is not going to be getting back in though, he begins walking. Eventually, Jeppard and Jimmy arrive at the dam as well. Gus lets them in. They are all happy to see each other, and Jeppard is glad to hear that Haggerty has been taken care of. Jeppard, he sees Lucy. He hasn't seen her in a month, remember? And he is sad to see that she is all sick now, and how sick she has gotten, how much the disease has progressed. He goes over to Lucy and says, "No. When did it start?" And she tells him, "Right before you left, I couldn't tell you." And as they talk some more, Lucy tells Jeppard, "I'm glad you are here. Now you can take care of them. Keep them safe." Lucy, she was holding on as long as she could, but with Haggerty now gone and Jeppard back, she can stop fighting and let go. And she passes away and dies. And Jeppard says, Lucy? God damn it, Lucy! Lucy!" And with Lucy dying, that is how Volume 5 ends. Alright, so that was Volume 5. Lots to dive into here. So let's talk about the Taxidermist story arc first. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I did not enjoy the artwork, and I feel weird criticizing artwork because I can't draw for shit. But no, I just didn't like it that much. Not as much as I like Jeff Lemire's artwork. But let's talk about that story arc, because it is very important, because we got our answers about this disease and the hybrids and the plague and everything. So in 1911, the Inuits had some sort of ice cave, ice tomb, and inside that tomb are all these like caskets or something, and there's animals carved into these caskets, and inside the caskets are like these hybrid animal looking god things or something. And because mankind disturbed the tomb's rest, these gods' rest, they're going to be taking it out on mankind and spread this disease to everyone. And that is sort of the supernatural explanation for the hybrids and the disease. Now, in Volume 6, we're going to further elaborate on all of that and get some more explanation of how that ties into the current day. But that's kind of your answer. That is sort of the deal with what is going on. Now, are you going to be satisfied with that answer? Hard to say. Everyone has a different taste. But that is what it is. It's an answer, at least. And it is kind of interesting to see that explored. And yeah, we'll have to save our judgments until we see where it all goes next volume. But lots of interesting stuff explored there. All right, and then the other story arc, once we got back to the current day, we got to see how Project Evergreen tied in with Walter, or this Haggerty. And I thought there was some really good, exciting tension there, and the fight that went down. That was good. I liked Jeppard and his new friend, Jimmy. And as a Canadian, I love that they are both these ex-hockey players, and then they strap on some ice skates and try to save the day by skating towards the dam. That was all great fun. So yeah, I thought this was a pretty good volume, and we're setting stuff up really nicely for the conclusion in Volume 6. There's only one more volume now. So yeah, I'm going to give this volume a 8 out of 10. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back next week with Volume 6, The Conclusion.